Today we're super excited because we have K-9 handler powerhouse Justin Rigney, aka K-9 Services Unlimited. He has about 25 years of experience, 10 years of experience working as a K-9 handler, and we are really grateful to have him on our live. So let's go ahead and invite Justin in. Invitation sent. You wait. Pulse. Hey, Justin. Did you get my invite? Live with Justin. Pulse. Good girl.
I'm here. Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I just did a little rundown of you and your experience, your 25 years with dogs and as a canine handler. So really appreciate you sharing your insight.
No problem. Always happy to talk about dogs and pay it forward anytime.
Awesome. So we had a lot of people asking about tracking. So what's the best way to start your dog with scent work and tracking?
Well, it kind of depends on the end goal. I mean, what I've done most of my career was real world tracking, tracking in all types of environments. So whether it's IPO or IGP, whatever they're calling that sport now, or real world tracking, I like to start with a system called back chaining or reverse engineering, where you teach the animal the end target first, which is a strict, clear article indication of the dog being in a down position, staring at the article between his paws. And then once the dog's very clear on that behavior, adding a lot of controlled distraction. And it's a system that I learned from Dick Stahl, who is, in my opinion, one of the greatest tracking teachers and practitioners in the world. And anybody that's interested in tracking, I highly recommend you look up Dick Stahl. He's got a ton of footage and a ton of content on YouTube. And he's a Dutch guy that teaches a lot of the Dutch police dogs the system. I brought him over twice when I was a cop down in South Florida, and he's an amazing guy, such a nice, humble guy, a very good teacher, and he taught us our system. And I was 3/4 of the way through a patrol dog school where we had done tracking and drive, and he taught us the system, and we put the brakes on everything and just rebooted every dog. And the benefits we saw were amazing. So it allows the dog to have very fine, detailed investigation in all types of contaminated environments. But so once you teach the dog the system of indicating the article, what I kind of did with the system is I took Nepopo, which is a system that I learned from Bart and Michael Bellin, and overlaid that over Dick Stahl's tracking system. So what that really means and what that really looks like is it allows me the ability to teach the dogs to do this behavior under high levels of distraction, but also add the element of a little bit of you must track even when sometimes you're highly distracted. So we utilize different tools for that. But once the dog understands the final response of indicating on the article, then you simply pull the animal away from just a couple of feet. This is the back chaining process. And they allow them to hunt the article, which is a nail. It's a tiny little small roofing nail that's recessed into the joints of brick pavers. I just produced a couple videos of. We have a lot more footage that's coming of it too. So it's a little bit hard to explain without demonstrating. But so the dog's looking for a needle in the haystack, a small roofing nail that's recessed into the joints of brick pavers. And then when you pull the dog back away from the final indication, they hunt their way back to get to the target, to get paid and reinforced, which in the beginning is a food-based training system. So once the dog indicates in the article, we drop food from above the dog's head, and naturally the food doesn't always cooperate. It hits the target and then it rolls away, which allows the dog to release from the position, goes and grabs the food if it rolled 5-10 feet away, and the dog comes and goes immediately back into hunting behavior to get back into that reverse engineering to find the end result of target pointing with his nose directly pinned to the target, to the article. And that process happens over and over and over. So what I did, again, with the Nepopo system is I've taught the dog's electronic collar separately in a separate context, making it a gas pedal, not a brake, making the dog super excited for the equipment to go around their neck. And then also when they feel electronic stimulus to bring the endorphins up, not as a suppressant. And then I've teach the dogs different behavior with electronics, but the way I overlay it in the system is once the dog is indicated on the article and I throw the food that hits the target and rolls away, again, they go to release themselves from the position, go achieve the food. And once they grab the food, I start very, very low tapping on the e-collar, which again is an accelerant, not a depressant. And they tap, tap, tap. And once they get back into the zone of the article, tapping stops, they achieve the target behavior, and then the food arrives. That's classic Nipo-Po. And then later, once the dog, I have a video that I've released on Facebook. I haven't put it out on Instagram yet, but it's a dog tracking in a contaminated environment. It's a police dog school that I helped with several years ago. That it's a little area in South Florida that's a lot of big outdoor mall or a lot of outdoor restaurants, which I know there's a lot of foot traffic. And there's one little tree in a little green section of grass that every little dog in the neighborhood comes and pisses on. So I know it's full of piss. So what allows me to do using the e-collar like that is once the dog leaves tracking behavior and I know that he's messing around and sniffing piss, I could administer a higher level of correction to say, stop that bullshit, and go right back into target behavior. And it allows them to hit that behavior by not losing any drive because we've installed the e-collar as a gas pedal. The dog knows this language clearly. So once you go set up your target, your specific targeted distractions, like it's controlled, you know exactly where the distractions are. So you can set booby traps for the dog later in the real world. He understands that the booby traps or the distractors are now commands to stay in behavior. So
really good information. What are the benefits of scent work? Like for, say, a family dog that wouldn't be going into law enforcement work?
Well, I think sometimes our heart's in the right place when we get dogs, but what we have to understand that domestication robs a predator of its natural reasons for being on the earth. Why God created these creatures were to be predators, and giving them 3 hots and a cot and a couch and free love and free food doesn't always make sense to a predator. So by simply adding hunting games to a dog who's bored out of their mind, and you do pet training, right?
Well, I mean, I train my own dog. I'm not a dog trainer.
Oh, you're not? Okay. So
No.
I don't know much about your background, but as pet trainers, that's constantly what we get. Dogs that are bored senseless have created games around the house to stimulate their minds as a predator and getting themselves in trouble that, drives people nuts. So by simply allowing the dog to experience hunting games, you're going to satisfy a huge primal instinct of a predator, which is hunting. Especially when the dog learns to hunt for a reward, or even if you're hunting for food, as the reward, is through existential training. It taps into the dog's instinct and he loves it. They absolutely love those games. So most of the time when dogs are doing excessive barking or they're shredding people's furniture or digging holes or, just being absolute assholes around the house, it's because they're bored out of their minds. There's been no structure, no boundaries, no behavior modification, and no outlets for physical and mental stimulation. So hunting game satisfies both of that. So what I tell a lot of my pet folks and even working dog people is that there's 2 sources of energy like we have, mental and physical. So for me, when I was a cop, I'd work 50, 60 hours a week, doing police dog schools, hunting bad guys. I'd have 4, 5, 6 boarding trains waiting for me when I got home. I'd find time to go to the gym, be a husband and a father, no problem. But if I made an arrest on the street and had to slow my roll and start doing paperwork, I would crash out in 5 minutes, man. My brain would be completely sapped. So a lot of dogs are the same way. They can go, work for hours straight physically. But if you're not stimulating their brain with problem solving, with hunting, with tasks, there's a massive source of energy that lies dormant. And that's the source of energy they're going to dedicate to breaking your chops around the house. So by using scent games for nose work, which is a civilian game, it really gives the dog another dimension to utilize their primal instincts to make them balanced, to find harmony in the house.
How can people do scent work in their home?
Well, you can pick the target odor. I mean, you could have them search for coffee or, donuts, whatever you want. You just have to make the connection between the dog finding that source and getting their reward. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually attending. I've never played in civilian nose work. I have some of the essential oils, which, birch oil, anise, and those different scent kits that they have, but I've never played in the game. I'm actually going to a seminar in a week or so up at Aaron Taylor's at Ridgeside Canine, Northern Virginia. He's hosting Dave Croyer, who's an incredible scent work guy. Dave's a magician at every facet of training. I'm a big fan of his, and I've stolen a ton of his shit. So it's the first time I'm going to meet him, but also, you know, learn the ins and outs of nose work. Because not only detection's super fascinating to me, you know, I'm a behavior geek, but the nose of the dog is very fascinating to me. And I've been in the bite suit for 25, almost 30 years, and I've been banged up a lot, and I still love the bite work and the full contact sport of that stuff. But for me, you know, getting close to 48 years old here and been in a bunch of car wrecks on duty, so my body's banged up. So nose work, again, not only is fascinating to me, it's very low impact. You know, I can sit in my lazy boy with a clicker and mark target search work, you know, and that's cool to me. It also opens up another dimension that we can offer our clients, you know, as far as nose work games, whether they want to compete or just go have fun with their dog. It gives a lot of options for that.
Mm-hmm. So actually, right before we started this live this afternoon, Ryka and I went to the park. We go to this open field, and there's nobody ever there. There's like one basketball court, and there's no basketball hoops because of COVID. We're in Los Angeles. And today, a coyote actually came up on us.
Wow.
And yeah, and I took Ryka, I had her on a 10-foot lead. I just took her to the car, put her in the crate, and I just waited. And I took out my phone and I shot a video of the coyote, but it was right there.
Wow.
I was wondering, like, what you think I should do, because I love that field because nobody's there, and since we're in the city, like, there's always people around, and it's like there's not a lot of distractions. We could do our own thing. Should I go back to it, or?
Well, I can tell you what would happen in Tennessee to that coyote. a little different outcome than what's going to happen in Los Angeles. So
Yeah.
I don't know, man. The fact that he's coming that close to a humanly populated area is not a good deal. Maybe he's a little desensitized to being naturally scared of humans. So I don't know, man. Maybe there's some folks that can hop on. I know there's some bait you can put out or some kind of anti-coyote stink bomb you can put. I don't know. But if he was in...
Even weirder. So we actually have seen coyotes walk around like in residential neighborhoods with collars, and they're doing some studies. So
Oh,
yeah,
no
I
kidding.
feel like LA, it's a whole different game.
Yeah.
Studying to see like how they're surviving. So
Ah.
I don't know. Your suggestion's definitely not going to work.
Yeah, it wouldn't happen. He'd be you know, on somebody's hat or something in Tennessee. So
Yeah. So so we want to introduce the e-collar to her now.
yes.
So Ryka's about 8 months old, and we waited to start the e-collar just because I wanted to get her like her training set, us correcting her with the leash pulls and the prong collar. But now, I mean, because of the safety issues, we want to take it to the next level and really
Sure.
fine-tune her.
Right on.
So how should we start that?
So the way I have a 3-step process that I like to use for the e-collar, and a couple of them may be foreign to some people. Maybe they've heard me speak about it in the past, but the very first thing I want the dog to perceive when he sees or she sees the equipment come out is that the party's about to start. So, for instance, it's classical conditioning, and every pet dog does this. Like when a pet owner grabs their leash, usually the dog, it is an announcement that they get to go outside, they get to go for walks and sniff and be dogs and search and be with their owner. It's a big event. So normally you see behaviors that connect in the dog's brain that it's good times. So the simple presence of the equipment is party time. Another example, my wife grabs her purse and her keys off the counter. Her little chihuahua that hates me, wants me dead. He goes berserk. Like he knows, hey, she's the only human being in the world that matters. But the little shit wants to go in the purse with her to go with her. So he's jumping up and down saying, don't forget, I'm here. So again, the equipment, the keys, the phone, the purse, we're creatures of habit, and these dogs are watching us, they're analyzing 24/7. He's linked that equipment means party time. I get to go with mama. So I'd like the same idea for electronics. Now, it's something we can manufacture. So what has to happen through classical conditioning is that the equipment must be linked to something the dog perceives as enjoyable and highly excitable. So whether it's going for a walk or going to do food-based obedience, like if you go to that park all the time, probably within, I don't know what it looks like, obviously. She's knocking your phone around. Probably within a block or so of that park, she probably starts getting excited in the car.
Yes.
Right? Because she knows exactly what time it is. Like, she's paying attention. She knows that you've almost arrived. So I would put the e-collar on her without it even being charged, with no remote. Just put the equipment on her and go do your normal routine. Go have fun. Because the equipment itself is going to be the gateway or the link to the door opening and her going having fun at the park. It could be the first time the dog gets out of the crate in the morning, or the first potty break, going outside. Like, going outside is a big event. So the way I like to do that is with dogs who like to bite, is that they know it's going to the bite field. So the e-collar goes on just before we enter the bite field, and they go and bite. So again, the collar becomes the catalyst for good feelings. It also becomes the announcement that the party's about to begin. And that's done through classical conditioning. So the dog is linking things together. He's linking events together and processing that the equipment means that signal. And that sometimes takes weeks, to really condition that response. So you'll know that it's good. Like, if your dog's chilling, sleeping, I see the little bed behind you, she's knocked out, you simply pick up the collar and rattle it, because she knows what that buckle sounds like. She knows what that equipment. If she springs up out of her sleep and comes flying to you to say, put that shit on my neck, it's time. It's time for the next step. So the equipment means good things. Take your time, do it right. I don't like to put the collar on and just start pushing buttons. Sometimes we're pressed for time, but if you have time, she's obviously your dog. Take another couple of weeks to strategically place the equipment on just before you do things the dog loves. The very next step is that I want to make the sensation of stimulation from the collar and produce endorphins to make good feelings come. And we manufacture that by the same way we can charge a clicker, is that the collar's on a level that maybe you don't even think the dog can feel. I give these animals probably way more credit than I should, but I believe they can hear the electronics zinging around inside the box. I believe they can smell the electricity. I think they are very acute with their senses. So even, I'm not sure what kind of collar you use, but let's say common collars, e-collar technologies, on number 2 or 1, you think the dog can't even register, you tap and wait 1/1000, almost 2/1000, and then feed the dog with food. So you don't want to be tapping and feeding simultaneously. You need a slight separation for classical conditioning. So it's tap, 1/1000, feed. That's for a dog who's not, maybe toy motivated. I see her playing with her Kong. What I'd like to really do is to connect high states of drive with the low level electronics. So what I'll do is go out to an area where the dog knows we're about to play ball or exercise or train and drive, is that I'll grab the dog by a flat collar, which is going to tap into some opposition reflex to make the dog want to go forward. I'll have the toy out in front of the dog. And if you ever played that little kick fetch game where the dog is almost about to get the toy and you boot it, that puts them in another level of drive, because it's the little prey is right in front of them. It's almost more drive inducing than throwing it. You have the opposition of the collar, you kick the toy out, and just before you release them, you tap on the low level of the e-collar. Boom, they go get the toy. It's not continuous. It's just you tap and release. So it's going to be like spurs. It's going to be like a giddy up to go, go, go. Again, you're going on a level that you're not convinced the dog can feel it. Then play that game a lot. Slowly creep up the level. Tap, go. Tap, go. And that's if she's crazy for a toy. Again, if she's not, tap for food. You can also play this game with restrained recall. Like if somebody holds your dog back, again, tapping into opposition reflex, you show the dog the reward, whether it's food or toy, and then you take off running. You go maybe 10 yards away. And what happens is that there's several drives or several instincts that are being activated. So number 1, it's pack drive. Mama or daddy is running away. That's very stimulating. It's prey drive, because you're moving away from the predator. And also you have the reward system that the dog wants to possess it. And also you have the opposition reflex of being held back, which is going to add fuel to the fire. So as you turn and call the dog's name, whoever's holding the dog also has the remote in their hand for the e-collar. Tap on a low level, let the dog fly to the handler. Again, you're creating giddy up, you're creating endorphins and high levels of drive associated with that stimulation. Now, why is that important? Now, some people may be saying you're insane because they have their e-collars maxed out, especially a lot of cops or people that work in bite sports. They're like, I don't want my dog being jacked up on her electronics. If your dog's not responding to the electronics, there's other reasons why. I'm not going to blast manufacturers by name. I don't want to catch a lawsuit. But there are manufacturers that produce a contracting stimulation. that when you tap the e-collar on continuous, it's taking muscle and grabbing it. Right? There's a big difference. You've seen it sometimes on dogs that have a receiver on one side of their neck where they feel the stimulation and they torque their heads and almost do like half a shrug that if they're at the gym. That's because that stimulation is grabbing the muscle and contracting it. During that contraction, to me, the way I perceive it is that learning is interrupted. Thought is interrupted. The dog is no longer on task. It's managing the tactile sensation that it wants to fight through. Where I can name this company because I'm involved with them, is the Martin Systems delivers an activating stimulation. It flicks muscle. It makes muscles jump instead of grab. So that's a neurological signal to the brain that makes the dog want to push into behavior as opposed to fighting contraction. So those are some of the things you got to take in consideration. Now, let's talk about outing and things like that. So dog training 101 yesteryear, they say everything must be high and tight. Like everything's got to be right under the chin to get the maximum control of the animal. Now, when you talk about outing, making the dog release, that if you look at my hand, like the muscles here contract and these muscles here open the hand. So if I have a device that contracts muscle underneath the jaw, it's going to grab those muscles and shut it. No matter what you say, the mouth is being closed. You could speak out all day long, but the neurological and tactile message to the brain is contract, which means bite harder. And all forms of dog training, tactile communication 100% of the time overrides verbal. So what you're saying, if it's working against what you're doing, what the dog's perceiving, what he's feeling, and what he's reading your body language as, the dog's going to go in that direction over your voice. So I see it all the time. If you're using a device that delivers contracting stimulation, to me, it clouds learning. So those are the things I wouldn't do. And what some of the systems that they use to overcome that contraction is tap, release, tap, release, tap, release. So it's a short-term contraction. But for me, it's still the same signal to the brain. And then you see people running two receivers on opposing sides of the neck. So it's not leaning one side or the other. It's like a shrug. So the dog's head stays centered. To me, it's still not conducive. So using the right equipment is important. So that's that second phase is tap and go. It is tap, release the dog in a high state of drive. And her hunting behavior is activated. I see her. She's back there looking around.
So we have the mini educator, the literal yellow one. What are your thoughts on that one?
I'm a distributor for them. I think it's a solid product. They're not one of the companies I'm talking about that distributes a contracting stim. I see one of the questions from K-9 Logic here about what do I think about the double receiver. There's several reasons that the double receiver became popular, and it's something I've touched on already. Is that it looks sexy as shit that you have two boxes around the dog's neck, and people say, well, the dog needs twice the juice. It's not. It's the same level of stimulation distributed on opposite sides of the dog's neck. It's to balance the dog's head. And that came from, in my opinion, one of the places it came from is the IPO world. Is that most of the time, because dogs go away from stimulation, that the e-collar is on the lower left side of the dog's neck to push upwards for attention healing. They want to push the dog towards the handler, but with the head up, so the collar goes there. Now, in IPO, most of the helpers wear the sleeve on the left arm. So as the dog comes into the blind, with the collar on the left side of the dog, it's pushing the dog. If they bump the sleeve in the blind, the electronic stimulation pushes the dog to the sleeve side of the blind, which is a no-go for the judges. They want the dogs doing convincing barking away from the sleeve stick side of the helper. So a lot of times they put two receivers on the dog's neck to not have that activity of pushing the dog over. But for me, it's also to not have that signal from both sides of the brain. So again, it's not, and the other big reason for the dual receivers is to have guaranteed contact, or I shouldn't say guaranteed, I just said a greater likelihood of contact. Because unless you have those contact points touching skin, you have no communication with the dog. So if you have two boxes on opposite sides of the dog's neck, and especially if you're using a bungee, it takes the contact points and draws them together and pushes them into the skin. So there's several reasons for the dual receivers. But now if you're using a system like Martin's system, or using the extenders where you can put any manufacturer's receiver onto the Martin extenders, you have the luxury of putting just about 360 degrees contact points wherever you want. So there's no, if you're using systems like the Martin system extender, there's no need to have dual receivers any longer. So that's a short story about that.
Okay.
So not to interrupt, but the third phase, so once the dog's jacked up under electronics, once the dog is tap and go, and the way you test that, so I always like to give people information about how do you know when you're ready to move on to step 3. Well, if you ever played that game where you go to your, I like to do things in the same location so the dog knows and can anticipate what's happening. You go out to the same place in the park where you play ball, and instead of, like you do a fake throw, but you don't throw the toy, the dog runs around and says, where's the damn ball? Yeah. You go out to your location where you've played the Nick reward game, the tap and go game. You have the remote in your pocket, or you're using a finger kick. You don't bring the ball out. You tap the electronics. If the dog jumps out, like you just threw the toy, because it's got a classical conditioned response that stim means go, now you know it's an activator. Now you know the dog is uplifted under stimulation. Now you can go on to phase 3, which is modifying or attaching low-level stimulation to a very clear learned behavior. Now that's the most important part of doing this step 3, is that you must link the electronics to a behavior the dog knows very well. It's got to be learned. So that's very important. Whether you use continuous or low tapping, that's something that I can't answer. It's something I see within the moment. Some dogs respond better to that momentary where they're just tap, 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 kind of like playing the hot and cold game. And then some dogs need that continuous sensation to shut it off to going to target behavior. So the third phase is something that everybody's doing already. It's nothing magical. But for me, and the first 2 parts of my e-collar preparation are from knee popo, which prepares the dog down the road for the day that they receive high levels of stimulation, to whether it's aversive control or high level correction, that the dog stays in drive. It doesn't crush the dog's spirit. Because not only we want the dogs looking flashy and engaged in competition, but the world's watching us right now. Everybody's watching, and it doesn't take a dog behavior genius to see if a dog's soul is crushed because you've used aversive control or you've used high level corrections. So you want the dog to be engaged and happy, but also being under stimulus control. It's a deal. We all walk the line. We all understand. The dogs know the same thing. Want to be fully engaged, fully in drive, in gear, but under stimulus control, and to have an overall nice looking picture. So
since we're just starting off on it, I'll definitely reach out to you about our progress. So first, we'll just put it on her and reward, make it a game, party time.
Yes.
Okay. So how long do you think we should do that for?
I would at least target out a couple of weeks. It depends. It kind of depends on your relationship with a dog. If you're a creature of habit like most of us are, and the dog's reading you, it's going to be very easy to connect it. The dog is watching. So once you see the dog, or your habits, the things that trigger her to get excited, you want to, and again, you have to watch your habits, that you're not going into that moment getting her too excited so she's going to fight you with a collar. It's almost like if the leash is on the countertop, before you grab the leash, have the e-collar in your pocket, put the e-collar on, and then within 2 seconds grab the leash, because the leash is the cue. In order to link the cues through classical conditioning, it's got to happen within 2 seconds. Not a lot of time. So just be cognizant of your body language, your mannerisms and habits, because the dog is reading all of that.
Okay. Love the bite work portion of it. Is that true? Or I'll let you take it away. What's your favorite?
Oh, so my side got cut out a little bit. So you're asking me what I love most about dogs, or
what is your favorite aspect of training dogs or dog sports, or just you've been working with dogs for so long. Like, what do you enjoy doing with them most?
Well, there was no greater high for me than hunting criminals, with my dog. That was incredible. Those days are over for me, and I don't regret. I don't miss it one bit. But I have some pretty amazing stories to tell, man. And I was a junkie for it. I was addicted to the streets, hunting bad guys. And that, to me, there's nothing better than that. To watch an animal evolve into a strong police dog is amazing. And I was lucky. I did it with 2 puppies. One puppy I saw born on my living room floor, and I raised him up to become a patrol dog, and that was cool. And then another dog, my last patrol dog, I saw him. He was imported at 8 weeks by my friend. I helped with a puppy training until he was about 4 months, and then I ended up buying him when he was about 6 or 7 months. So I've had the experience of watching them grow, and to me, from being a behavior geek, that's amazing. So the real world stuff is, unless you've done it, you can't explain it, man. It's crazy. And I've been in a shooting with my dog, and he was there for me, and some pretty interesting shit. I had somebody try to drown one of my dogs. So we've been in some battles, man. Some battles. I had one guy. We have at a drug down in South Florida called Flocka. I'm not sure if it ever made out west to you. You guys had PCP out there. Very similar, superhuman strength. They don't feel pain, and they melt from the inside, so they're always naked. So anyway, I tracked him. He did a burglary, and my dog went in and bit him on the inner thigh. It was super dark, and then he was in some bushes. So I shine my light in there, and I'm sifting through the bushes trying to get to my dog, and the guy is trying to eat my dog's ear. So it looked like some shit it looked like some shit at a National Geographic. Like he's got a full, like, if he was a Schutzen dog, it would have been V-rated points and gripping. This dude had my dog's ear down to the base of his head, and my dog is laying into his leg, man. I had the same reaction you had for a second. I'm like, what is happening? So it took everything they had to get this guy in custody. So just before my dog found him, I had gotten on the radio and gave an updated direction of travel. And just before I finished that transmission, you can hear the dog go in and the guy scream, and they start fighting on the radio. It was 2 minutes until I advised he was in custody, which doesn't sound like a long time, but it is a fucking eternity when you're scrapping with a dude in the dark, man. So I've seen some wild stuff. You know, I've seen what these animals can do, and their nose. To really, the short answer for me is their nose. So whether it's tracking or detection, I'm blown away by the capabilities of their nose. So I love the aggression work. My body's a little banged up from it. I like teaching younger guys and gals how to do that. And I will say that there's plenty of girls out there kicking dudes' asses in the suit. We did a seminar in New Orleans about a year ago, and the girls ran circles around the dudes. Circles. So much respect to that too. So, but yeah, aggression will always be one of my favorites. But for me, like right now, especially, it's the nose.
That's awesome. Wow, what a crazy story. I know you have more of those.
Yeah, there's a few.
Wait, okay, another top story.
Well, there's a few, man. It's the one, a guy eating my dog's ear. My shooting was pretty wild. You know, it's cleared, so I can talk about that. But it was a guy it was a paranoid schizophrenic off his meds. He was a suicide by cop. He wanted to die, and that day he picked me and my dog. So I had my dog out with me. He charged me with a 14-inch Crocodile Dundee knife. And I wrote an article not too long ago, maybe a year ago, about auditory exclusion. And then the article was based about should cops make dogs verbally out on the street? And the article I wrote about auditory exclusion is that when you're hypervigilant in a high stress situation, your body goes into survival, and it's going to shut off senses it doesn't need. And one of them is the ears. So I shot 8 rounds. They told me I shot 8 rounds. I never heard one of them, right? I hit the guy 4 times. I didn't know that I even hit him at the time. But he was, you know, and I had my dog in one hand, and I'm shooting right over the top of my dog's head because my dog is agitated. He's got target lock on this guy too. So the guy went to the ground. He had dropped the knife, and he was still moving around on the ground, but I could definitely tell he was separated from the knife. So I holstered my gun, and I commanded my dog to apprehend him, which he did with no hesitation. So from a dog behavior standpoint, from the dog taking 40 caliber rounds right over his head, staying on task, and he actually had to jump over a little bush that was probably about 2 or 3 feet high. It was maybe like mid-thigh. So for the dog to demonstrate, you know, his God-given genetic ability combined with training to put that all together in that moment. I mean, forget about the shooting and forget about me, but to watch the dog perform at that level and not hesitation wasn't even a thing, but to get stronger in that moment, to me was a wow thing, you know. Once I was able to decompress and, you know, eventually the guy, he died right there on scene. But once everything was secure and I'm walking the dog back to the car, and I had parked really, really far down the street because this guy was waiting for us. So it was a long walk back to the car where I was just blown away at the dog's performance. So for me, that was pretty wild.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Heavy shit.
Yep.
Oh.
So for me, it's just Frenchies now. French bulldogs.
More low key.
Yeah.
So you said that your first dog, it was a puppy. Can you kind of just walk through, like for the police dogs, how it works? Like, are the dogs bred to be in the police force, or is it just kind of like, not random, but like someone can train a dog really well and then they're sold to the police? Can you help me?
Sure. Yeah. A traditional, typical situation is a dog is brought into this country or bred in this country. The top blood is here. There's no reason, or less and less times we're going to Europe, especially with the virus now, but the blood is here. The genetics is in this country. But typically what happens, the dog is with a vendor that's been raised to produce or have the specific behaviors we need: insatiable hunt drive, bulletproof nervous system, sociability, enough offensive controllable aggression that we can utilize to channel into productive behavior. So all these typical things, not only on that, but also health, is that the dog's about a year old. Sometimes it used to be, like if you go back pre 9/11, the dogs were 2.5 years old. We were getting them off, training, Camp V training fields or competitions or somewhere in Europe. And it was hard to get your hands on a dog less than 2. But now it's the opposite. They say the dog's a year, but he's 9 or 10 months, or she's 9 or 10 months. So it's opposite. So since 9/11, the global demand on dogs has gone through the roof. The supply cannot fulfill the demand. So a lot of players are in the game. So with that is that once the dog is of age to be tested, the departments will go and search the vendors and look for a dog that meets their criteria. And then they're joined up with a handler, and the handler goes through their school and gets on the road and starts to become a patrol dog. But for me, because my story about becoming a canine handler is a little bit different. I was a civilian dog trainer first, loved it, and then became a cop. So I won't bore you to tears with that whole thing, but in law enforcement, that helped me, but it also hurt me. There's a lot of egos and bullshit. But I had a lot of dog experience before I became a cop. It's the whole reason I became a cop, was to work a dog. So with my first dog, who was named Vader, I didn't do any selective breeding. I had a female Malinois that I knew that was from Strong Dogs, and there was a police dog down in Lauderhill, Florida, named Prince. His handler was a guy named Julio Tobar, who later left to the FBI, but this dog was an absolute savage. He was unbelievable dog. He would track so deeply on hard surfaces that he would scuff his nose and lips.
Damn.
And he worked in one of the roughest ghettos in the country. I mean, it's a bad area, and he was a savage. He was a legend. So I bred that dog to the female Malinois that I had. And the female Mal that I had was just a squeaky little 45-pound thing that wouldn't bite a biscuit. I mean, she was just a happy social thing. Mm-hmm. But she produced Vader, who, like I said, he was born on my living room floor, and I saw him, raised him up, and I got lucky, man. And I had good people around me to help decoying. A guy named Gus Artilles here and down in West Palm, he helped me raise that dog. And I was just put in a position to get into canine and to have an opportunity, because in Florida, it's the wild, wild west. I don't know if you watch any of those crime channels like ID Channel or any of these. It's always Florida. There's always some shit out here. So the dogs get a lot of work, and he did, and it was very cool to see. So not too typical. It does happen. I know there's some guys up in Boston area that are raising puppies doing some really good shit, and you're seeing it more and more because with little forums like you and I speaking here live, is that we're able to get information now, where yesteryear we weren't. You had to attend a seminar. You had to go outside your little tribe to figure out who's doing what and try to learn. And you were a victim of your geography. So whoever was around you, you hoped that they were credible and knowledgeable and were good teachers and that you could learn something. But for me, my early imprinting in dogs was around extremely talented people. So I got very lucky that way. So it's just luck,
Mm-hmm. So cool. Transitioning away from police canine work for dog sports, what is the best age to get them involved in? dog sport?
Well, I think the best ways is raising from a puppy, but it's such a gamble. It is such a gamble. I mean, I've bred a lot of litters over the years and only produced a couple that can do it to my standard, you know? So it's very hard, but, you know, they're doing things with puppies these days at 6 weeks old. I mean, I put a video out not too long ago, the last litter that I had, that I was charging the clicker as soon as I believed that the puppy's ears were available to hear it. You know, the puppies are dead asleep. Mama's outside the whelping box. Just before I let her come in and feed, rapid fire the clicker, mama enters. Do this every feeding as much as possible. Before you know it, I can hit the clicker with no mama and they start spinning and crying and squeaking. Like classical conditioning is born within a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty amazing. You can start doing shit with puppies as babies. But again, you're going to put in 6 months to a year of work and then realize the dog's doesn't have the nervous system to perform at the level you want. So you have, if you're a sport competitor, it's the journey has to be the juice. Like you have to love the training. And if you don't get there, too bad. You learned with this dog, you move on to the next one. Or you have a couple on the way. You know, you have a year old, a 6 month, and a brand new baby puppy, all continuing the rotation. So if one doesn't make it, you want to put all your eggs in one basket. So
I have a lot of people asking me, oh, is Ryka going to do bite work? Is she going to do personal protection or dog sport? And I haven't committed to anything. I think like right now, Dave and I's goal with Ryka is to have her extremely well trained, and we are very consistent and diligent with Ryka. Like it's very structured. We're not dog trainers, but we take it very, very seriously.
Sure.
Also, I have no experience with dog sports, so I don't even know how to like get into the club or how it works. What's your advice for me, like if this is even something that I should think about doing?
Well, there's a lot of different schools of thought. For me, it's simple raising a puppy for work. You let them do whatever the fuck they want, right? And when you can't deal with them, you put them up. Because when you train a dog in the house and you don't want them jumping on furniture or stealing a dish rag off the countertop, you're suppressing behaviors that you want to promote on the sport field. So like if they get punished for putting their mouth on things, you can make an impression in a young dog that says, putting my mouth on shit is taboo. But yet you go into the sport field and you expect them to want to bite the rag. You know, we know the difference. We know it's okay, but sometimes the dogs don't read those signals the same way. So for me, and there's some people that will say obedience. When I say obedience, I like free shaping brain games. Like let the puppies be bullies and empower them to realize they can control the environment, to push you to give them the reward that they need to live. There's a whole nother, we can talk for hours about that. But when I say obedience, I'm talking about brain games, not sits down stands for duration and distraction, none of that shit. But the dog's really, really being jacked to work and it's their idea. They'll fight for their invention kind of stuff. But so I'm doing that separately, but like, not to break your chops, but your dog right now has got free reign of the house. Like,
yes, 100%.
She's doing whatever she wants. Like the Kong behind you has lost value.
I know.
So she's off going to go she's hunting with something else to entertain herself. So of course they need the social time. Of course they need the out time. But a lot of times putting them in their own little office to chill, a little crate, is going to make them build up energy and desire to make their toys much more interesting when they come out. And the work is productive. So a dog can sleep 20 plus hours a day. You don't want to waste that formidable time of energy they can dedicate. And a lot of these mouths have no shut-off switch, but even some of them. So getting that energy and channeling it into productive behaviors. And then once you've got that training session done, you've reached your goals and the dog's learned, I like putting them in their crate or their kennel in isolation. Reason being, it's a much greater level of retention than if they go fuck around the house or go play grab ass at the dog park or whatever. So I'm not talking about all day, but just another hour or two. So they go from working and learning and they leave the environment of the work wanting more. They don't achieve complete satiety where they're like, this is it. You want them leaving pissed where they want more. They go into isolation and they can't wait to get back out. So sometimes if your goal is sport or work, you have to make the decision because it's very difficult to raise a dog as a pet, suppressing drive in the house, but then popping the top to the combustion chamber out in the field where they're allowed to go do. Because again, most people don't want pet dogs jumping on people that come into your house.
Sure.
What's bite work? Jumping on the decoy and the helper, right? So it can be contradicting. And I've had a lot of female mouths in my time. They are sensitive creatures, right? They can be very sensitive and intuitive to your emotions and things like that. So you can make a really hard impression on her brain with not jumping and suppressing drive in the house, where she says that shit doesn't play at the park either. So sometimes you got to flip the coin and make the decision. Is she going to be a work dog or is she going to be a pet?
Yeah.
Some can do both.
Yeah. I think you helped me make the decision, like, that she will be a pet, because I am social and I like being in Los Angeles. I feel like it would be a liability if she were to bite, or I don't know. We'll have to talk when she's more well trained. Like today, this morning we did training, heel, luring on the left side. We played some tug, and then she chilled, had crate time. And then this afternoon we went out in the field, lots of fetch during the fetch session, like doing some training.
Yep.
So she gets a lot of exercise, and
Sure.
her brain is always going. But like right now she's sleeping on the couch. Like that might be a no, like don't go on the couch, you have to be invited over. I think with these sessions I'm having a problem, because while I know she should probably be in the crate away, I know there's people that are always like, where's Ryka? So I think this is a good solution, but at the end of the day, it's like I'm conditioning her to like do whatever she wants.
Right. I think you don't change a thing. If you find, like, if you're in Los Angeles, for sure, I'd go visit Oscar Mora, Elevated K-9.
I was supposed to go there today, but Oscar, so we're going to go next week.
Right. So, and then it can be contextual. Like, so maybe she's completely opened up. Don't use any of your control equipment. I'm sure Oscar's going to coach you on this, but don't use any prong, or it's all things that are going to make her pull, harnesses, flat collars. Let her go out there and let them unlock what's in her and see what's there. And maybe she can be a savage on the field and then be a very cool, well-mannered dog in public and in your house. So I think with your goal is that you make her the pack member, the dedicated family member that you want her to be, and have balance and structure and do all those things. And then if Oscar can bring it out of her, it's in her. If it's in her, he will get it out of her and see where it goes. And don't worry about the liability thing. You're not going to alter the dog's natural genetics unless he's doing fear-based pain response aggression work, which he's not. He's going to build on natural instincts and natural DNA that God has put that blueprint in her, and he's just going to manufacture or pull it out of her if it's in there. So don't think she's going to go clip somebody, downtown Los Angeles just because Oscar's done some rag work with her. I wish it was that easy. Trust me.
Right.
I wish it was. So.
Right. Well, that's very helpful and inspiring for me. So I'll definitely talk to Oscar about it.
Cool. He'll get you there.
Yeah.
And I'll be out there in January.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Where will you be?
I don't know exact location. It's somewhere out there. He hasn't given me the exact date. He's going to develop a flyer for it, but it's January 30th, 31st.
Okay.
It's gonna be all things, dog work, kind of stuff we've talked about. So
awesome. I'll mark it in the calendar.
Cool.
Thank you so much. We're almost at an hour. Is there anything else you want to touch on since I have you here?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this for days. So
yeah.
I'm just grateful for the opportunity. God has blessed me put it on my heart to listen to dogs and pay attention and learn a few things. And I'm always grateful for that. And anytime I can pay it forward and maybe help somebody, that's what I'm all about. It is my livelihood. It's how I make a living, but I have to give back. It's just how I am. So I'm thankful and grateful for the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Justin. It's nice to meet you, and I love hearing your stories. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon. I'll keep you posted on the e-collar.
Right on.
Oscar.
Very cool.
Okay.
All right. Take care.
Justin.
Thank you.
Thank you.